So the following will be the figurative language of Jane Eyre. So we have here simile, allusions, and onomatopoeia. A simile compares two things, the word like or, as in order, to create a vivid description. After Jane's parents and her uncle read, Jane is left in the custody of a cruel and abusive aunt. Jane describes the time she tried to defend herself. Mrs. Reed was rather a staunch woman, but on hearing this strange and audacious declaration, she ran numbly up the stair, swept like a whirlwind into the nursery, and crushing me down on the edge of the crib, dared me in an emphatic voice to rise from the place or utter one syllable during the remainder of the day. It was said in chapter 4. Jane described the way Mrs. Reed moves her to the next room using the simile sweep me like a whirlwind. So let's proceed to the next one we have here. Allusion. So what is allusions? So allusions are references to history or literature that an author makes in passing, encouraging readers to create meaning from the mention. In Jane Eyre, there are several biblical references. For example, when Jane goes to her new school, she described the scene as Miss Miller. The teacher directs the class. Discipline prevailed. In 5 minutes, the confused throng was resolved into order. In comparative silence, quelled the Babel clamor of tongues. So it was said in chapter 5. In the book of Genesis in the Holy Bible, the Tower of Babel is a story that explains the origin of all the different languages when men attempted to build a structure that could reach heaven. God confused their language and scattered them over the earth to prevent them from working together. In this example, the allusions to Babel describes the degree of confusion Jane feels at her new school. So let's proceed to the last one. We have onomatopoeia. So onomatopoeia involves an author using words that sounds like the noise they emulate. For example, when Rochester returns from a party, he is accompanied by a party of his own. Jane is miserable as she narrates. I saw them smile, laugh. It was nothing. The light of the candles had as much soul in it as their smile. The tinkle of the bell as much as significance as their laugh. It was written in chapter 17. The word tinkle is an example of onomatopoeia because it is a sound effect. So what is the theme of this novel? So the theme of this novel is love versus autonomy. So Jane Eyre is very much the story of a quest to be loved. Jane searches not just for romantic love but also for a sense of being valued, of belonging. Thus, Jane says to Helen Burns, to gain some real affection from you, or Miss Temple, or any other whom I truly love, I would willingly submit to have the bone of my arm broken, or to let a bull toss me, or to stand behind a kicking horse and let it dash its hoof at my chest. It is said in chapter 8. Yet over the course of the book, Jane must learn how to gain love without sacrificing herself in the process. Her fear of losing her autonomy motivates her refusal of Rochester's marriage proposal. Jane believes that marrying Rochester while he remains legally tied to Bertha would mean rendering herself as a mistress in sacrificing her own integrity for the sake of emotional gratification. On the other hand, her life at Moor House tested her in the opposite manner. There, she enjoys economic independence and engages in worthwhile and useful work, teaching the poor, yet she lacks emotional sustenance. Although St. John proposes marriage, offering her a partnership built around a common purpose, Jane knows their marriage would remain loveless. Nonetheless, the events of Jane's stay at Moor House are necessary to test of Jane's autonomy. Only after proving her self-sufficiency to herself can she marry Rochester and not be asymmetrically dependent upon him as her master. The marriage can be won between equals, as Jane says, "I am my husband's life as fully as he is mine. To be together is for us to be at once as free as in solitude, as gay as in company. We are precisely suited in character. Perfect concord is the result." This one is said in chapter 38. So that's it. That is the theme of this novel. We have here the last one, which is the moral lesson of the novel. So we have five, so we are going to discuss this one. So the first one here is be a brave person before being a good person. So the Jane Eyre, the main character of this story, grew up in a loveless environment, and her childhood was portrayed almost like a Cinderella story. But the difference was she was fearless, outspoken, and bold even in her childhood. At the age of 10, when she gets to know that she is being sent to a charity institution by her cruel aunt, there is nothing stopping her from the outburst she throws at her aunt for mistreating her and declares that she'll never call that woman her aunt again. She speaks out against her to be husband as well when she discovers she has a wife. When Jane gets to know that her uncle has left a fortune for her, she insisted on sharing it with her cousins who had helped her later in life through thick and thin. So Jane's childhood and adolescence was miserable, but she does bounce back and doesn't fall prey to life adversities. According to Jane Eyre, she said there, "Life appears to me too short to be spent in nursing animosity or registering wrongs." So yes, that's it. Now let's proceed to number 2. No matter what happens, stick to your principles. So being an orphan, Jane never lost the path to righteousness or did anything immoral. In this story, Jane is head over heels in love with Mr. Rochester, but leaves him at the aisle when she discovers that he has a wife. Even after convincing from the love of her life, not once does she retract from her decision. Though she does marry him later when the wife passes away in an accident. She knows that marrying a married man is against her principles and morals. Moreover, she cannot be a homewrecker for another couple just for the sake of her feelings. At later instance as well, when Saint John asked her to accompany him to his voyage to India for a missionary work as his wife, Jane refuses since that would mean compromising her passion in a loveless marriage. She also said there, "I am free human being with an independent will." So this is according to Jane Eyre. She is so strong and independent, as we all can see. So let's proceed to number 3. So we have here, Being educated is being self-reliable. Jane is deprived of all the things in life which are normal for us to have. She has no family or money, not even a person whom she could call a friend after her sole friend at the Luwood institution died in her arms when they were, though conditions at charity institution were inhumane. Jane focused on her studies and came out as an educated woman. Out of all the odds, Jane manages to get a job as a governess at Thornfield Hall and lives with dignity. Out of all that she earns, she also manages to save more of it and travel away from Thornfield after she breaks off her wedding. On reaching another destination, though with some help from her relatives, Jane again arranges for a job as a teacher. So she also said, "Here, I care for myself. The more solitary, the more friendless, the more unsustained I am, the more I will respect myself." This is according to Jane Eyre, which justified being educated is being a self-reliable. Now let's proceed. Number 4. Marry only for love, nothing else. Jane's love life too is as complicated as everything else in her life. She falls in love with Mr. Rochester, her employer, who is also in love with her. Their wedding is interrupted by the revelation that Rochester has another wife, which compels Jane to break off the wedding because of her principles. She is then proposed to by a St. John, but turns him down since she knows that it would be nothing but a loveless alliance, which won't be a meaningful marriage. The fact that one should always marry for love can also be seen in Mr. Rochester's life. His first marriage was more on a business deal since he had an eye for his father-in-law's wealth. Little did he know that his wife has underlying mental condition which eventually wrecked their marriage. So their marriage also did not work. And yes, at the end of the day, Rochester and Shane get married. So it was been said here, I could not unloved him now, merely because I found that he had ceased to notice me. Yes, this is according to Jane Eyre. We have here the last one. We have always hope for the best. Having a traumatic life as a child, Jane never lost hope. When she was sent to the charity institution by her aunt, Jane hoped that no matter what, at least the place will be better than her aunt's place. When Jane came to Luwood Institution, the inedible food and harsh conditions would not frighten her. Instead, she strived to have a better fortune and studied well. Jane's fate helped her through thick and thin. Eventually, good things did happen to her. She inherited a fortune from her uncle, married the love of her life, and found happiness in the end. It all turned out to be all right. And she said here, even for me, life had its glimpse of sunshine. This is according to John Ergy herself. And that would be all. Thank you so much for listening.